I am Kelly Thomason, and we're so glad that you all could join us. I'm a proud Alexandria resident and vice chair of the Act for Alexandria Board of Directors. And again, we're thrilled you all took some time from your day to join us in this really important conversation about economic well-being in the city of Alexandria and how we can work together and improve well-being for all of our fellow community members. So here's a quick overview of today's agenda. Going to go to the next slide. Okay, perfect. Um, First, we are going to hear from Brandi about what do we mean when we talk about economic well-being and how ACT advocates and helps move the needle on economic well-being across the community. Next, we've got Kate joining us from the city to share some great data and context and really help shape this conversation. We're going to have a little Zoom fireside chat. Everybody get cozy. Brandi and Kate are really going to talk about this, dive into this issue, give us a deep dive, and then we want to hear from you. We're going to take your questions and open it up. And then hopefully leave you feeling inspired with some action items to get involved and help move this conversation forward. So, a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We ask, again, introduce yourself. We want you to be active in this conversation. So if you're in the chat or when we open it up for questions, please tell us who you are. Again, please engage. We want to not just talk at you, but hear from you too. So if there's comments, we've got a couple of polls as we go. We do really want to hear from you. So again, in that spirit of community building and participation, if you're comfortable leaving your camera on, that's always a great way to help make sure we're all engaged and of course muted. We will ask you to avoid solicitation and any partisan commentary because that is not why we're here today. And so let me introduce our speakers. Just going to be on our next slide. All right. We have Brandi Yee, who is our Chief Program Officer here at ACT. I'm sure many of you know Brandi. She's been with ACT for, almost since the very, very beginning. And so we're thrilled to have her as part of this conversation, and then really excited to have Katherine Clardy Key joining us from the city of Alexandria. Katherine is with the Office of Analytics, Innovation, and Data, and so she's got all of that really good metrics and data to share with us to back up this conversation and provide that context. So thrilled to have them both here. Thank you all so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandi so we can dig into this conversation.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Kelly, and good morning, everyone. I want to thank you and echo Kelly's thanks for having you all join us this morning. We really appreciate the opportunity to share more about how ACT is advancing economic well-being in our community and how advocacy strengthens that work. We typically start our stakeholder briefings with a poll because we really want to hear from you. So we want to know, what does economic well-being mean to you? So you have some options, the ability to meet basic needs without constant worry, stable housing and long-term financial security, access to good jobs and economic opportunity, living in a community where everyone has the chance to thrive, or if there's another definition that you have, go ahead and put that in the chat. So hopefully you'll see the poll that's up there, and if you can go ahead and start entering your responses, that would be great. Okay. How are all I can't see all the responses coming in, but hopefully my team can tell me if we're at a good point and we can share the results. Okay, fantastic. So as you can see, it looks like majority of folks are saying living in a community where everyone has the chance to thrive. That's great. Okay, let's go ahead and close that. And thank you all for that. That was super helpful. So as you can see from this definition that we have here, I would say it's a bit of all the things that were just on the previous slide. As we were thinking about economic well-being and what that meant, we listened to what experts were saying. And those experts included the Urban Institute and their upward mobility framework, Alexandria nonprofit leaders, conversations with community members conducted by the city's Economic Mobility Coalition, and again, just conversations we were having with residents. There were some pulse check questions that we were asking to try to get to this definition. Things like, do you feel like you have enough to pay for the things that you and your family need, like food, housing, transportation, and living expenses? What does financial security look like for you? What does that mean for you? What keeps you in Alexandria? And also, what are your hopes and dreams for yourself and for your community? So, based on all that, at ACT, we really view economic well being as having enough to meet your basic needs, to build stability, and create opportunities for the future. It's about more than just surviving. As one Alexandrian shared with us, it's like having room to breathe and feeling freedom. It's about Alexandrians thriving and experiencing economic success, a sense of dignity and belonging, and power and autonomy to build their lives and futures that they want, and so that their families can thrive here in this community that they call home. So this definition really reflects what we continue to hear from residents, nonprofits, and community partners, that economic well-being is that combination of financial, but also what it means to be human. And so it includes stability, opportunity, connection, and the ability to really make choices about your future. So now, as we think about that definition, how are we at ACT advancing this economic well-being? So we're doing that through a combination of things, whether it's grant making, convening, advocacy, systems level collaboration. This slide kind of gives you an overview of all the work that we're doing, and I really wish I had a chance to talk about all the things, but I want you to see that there's two interconnected areas. One is supporting nonprofits and strengthening the ecosystem or the sector, and the other is really how do we support the economic well-being of Alexandrians? And we will talk today about initiatives like the advocacy work we're doing, how we're doing it through housing stability and the eviction diversion pilot, and also through workforce development with the youth employment and career and technical education convening work that we're doing. We see both of these sides as really deeply connected. We know that strong nonprofits are essential to a thriving community, and community-wide economic well-being really requires both direct services and systems change. So this means that ACT is not only investing in programs and partnerships, but also in helping to shape policies and build those cross-sector collaborations that can create longer-term impact. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our advocacy work and how we've been using it as a tool to support nonprofits and support Alexandrians. And we really see that advocacy has been an increasingly important tool for us because many of the barriers that impact nonprofits and residents are systemic. So late last year, ACT released its first ever economic mobility agenda. This agenda was developed through conversations with nonprofits, city and school leaders, employers, and residents to better understand the challenges that Alexandrians are facing and where policy and funding changes could have the greatest impact. And at the same time, several nonprofits approached ACT about the need to advocate for additional funding to meet the growing demand for basic needs. As many of you know, Alexandria's nonprofits are often the first place our neighbors turn when they need help with housing, food, childcare, healthcare, or navigating a difficult moment. They're on the front lines responding to these gaps, which is why maintaining a strong safety net is so important for our community. And through conversations with stakeholders across the city, we recognize that in order for our community to thrive, we really needed to advocate for bold, sustained commitments to stabilize families, expand pathways to economic well-being, and strengthen nonprofits that are critical to this work. So if you take a deeper dive into our 13-point agenda, you'll see that we broke it down into different focus areas: economic development, housing, economic stability, workforce development, and resource equity. And so the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the wins that we saw. So this is our first time, so we were really excited to dive in to advocacy and did not really know what to expect. but we saw some really exciting things happen at the local and the state level. At the local level, as we were taking a look at the FY27 city budget, we really wanted to make sure we were securing funding for nonprofits that are serving residents. And so we are pleased to see that they are including $550,000 in new and ongoing funding for survival services. This funding was previously a part of the Alexandria Fund for Human Services, which is the city's grant program. But in addition to the $1.9 million that they have designated, there's now another $550,000 for survival services. We also saw that rental assistance increased by another $550,000, and this means that more residents can remain stably housed. I would say this would not be possible without the advocacy of nonprofits, Alexandria residents, and the hard work and dedication of the city staff and the city council. At the state level, ACT was focused on advocating for tenant protections to help residents stay in their homes and reduce housing instability. I had the opportunity to go to Richmond with some foundations across the Commonwealth for the Virginia Funders Network's first Advocacy Day. And we had the opportunity to meet with legislators and talk about the role that philanthropy can play alongside state government as we advance housing stability. Some of the key wins that I want to call out that we should all be really excited for is the establishment of a permanent eviction reduction program. Now, this means there is now a permanent program within the Commonwealth's Department of Housing and Community Development to expand their work to promote housing stability, to identify factors that contribute to eviction filings, and provide interventions to prevent or divert evictions. They are also expanding eligibility for the eviction diversion program, and this means more residents can participate in the program and have real options before they reach the point of eviction. Alexandria will be piloting an eviction diversion program starting this summer, and I'll talk about that in a future slide. And then finally, legislation was signed by the governor through the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, and that extends the waiting period to 14 days before a landlord can end a rental agreement after a missed payment. Essentially, this allows a resident more time to pay for their rent before being officially entered into the eviction process. That process can have destabilizing effects for families, including impacting their credit and their ability to secure future housing. And Katherine is going to share more about the importance of this when she talks about eviction rates in Alexandria. But just wanted you to see that together, these funding and policy changes create more time, more flexibility, and more opportunities for residents to remain housed. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about what ACT is doing. And so one of the things, again, we continue to see is that advocacy and our program work really are interconnected. They operate together to address both the immediate needs and the long-term systems change. So ACT on the eviction diversion side is convening partners who work in the legal space, the housing space, financial assistance, faith-based communities, the nonprofits, to pilot this program. And so an eviction diversion program is a court-based initiative that helps landlords and tenants resolve housing disputes without formal eviction proceedings. So these programs offer mediation, legal aid, financial assistance to help keep tenants housed while ensuring that landlords receive the rent that they're due. Other ways that we're supporting this effort include funding for a courthouse navigator. This is someone who will be at the court to talk to residents who are coming there as part of this process. And as we think about designing what this pilot could look like, it is really important for us that it be community-centered. And so that means hearing from residents about their experience with the eviction process and how this program could better support their needs. We are excited about being able to pilot this, and we want to keep our legislators apprised of what's going on in this pilot so they can see how legislation is playing out in real ways. And if there are ways to improve the program and policies, we want to share those too. And so similarly, through the Alexandria Youth Employment and Career and Technical Education Initiative, ACT is convening a working group comprised of 50 plus leaders from city government, schools, nonprofits, funders, employers, and higher education institutions to support workforce development and career readiness for Alexandria's young people. With these partners and input from actually 200 stakeholders across Alexandria, including students and families, we recently mapped the youth ecosystem, the youth employment ecosystem, to better understand what programs and service supports exists and where the gaps are. So hopefully somebody can drop in our report, the Building Better Futures to Better Pathways. But some of the key takeaways include that Alexandria youth don't always know what programs exist. Sometimes there's a struggle to access them, or they might not have the supports that they need to be successful. We know that Alexandria has a robust but sometimes fragmented ecosystem that leans towards career exploration, which is fantastic, but there's also gaps in paid work-based learning experiences that will lead to certifications and living wage jobs. We know that everyone wants to collaborate, but capacity, funding, and coordination are limiting what's possible. So, as kind of next steps, we're looking at how we can expand work-based learning opportunities for students, but making sure that those align with workforce needs in high-demand industries that pay a living wage. And we're also trying to advocate for supports like an employer liaison role that can really serve as that point person that strengthens connections between employers with job opportunities and providers with students that are seeking meaningful work. All right, I know that's a lot, but we'll go to the final slide and just show you a little bit about how ACT is working with our nonprofits to strengthen the nonprofit sector, but also the philanthropic sector and our, I guess, holistic capacity to advocate on effectively and sustainably. So, in collaboration with 8 other foundations across Northern Virginia and in partnership with Voices for Virginia's Children, which is an independent multi-issue child policy and advocacy organization, we co-hosted 2 in-person and 2 virtual learning sessions that engaged more than 100 nonprofit leaders across the region. And these sessions really help to strengthen these nonprofits' understanding of how advocacy can advance their missions and really build long-term systems change. I will say that the insights that were surfaced through these conversations really helped to inform ACT's engagement of our partners and to help us develop that first ever economic mobility agenda. I will also say that it helped with our advocacy efforts when we went down to General Assembly and also in our testifying at the Alexandria City Council budget hearing. And looking ahead, we're building on that momentum and that interest from nonprofits and talking to Voices for Virginia's Children, as well as the Northern Virginia Health Foundation, who's also interested in this work, about a workshop series designed to help nonprofits think strategically across the year. How do we break down advocacy activities by season or by quarter and help us to not have reactive advocacy, but more sustained, proactive strategies that we can work on throughout the year. And so finally, over the past 2 years, ACT has had the opportunity to present our advocacy work at the Virginia Funders Network conferences. And as a result, we were recently featured in their report highlighting the power and potential of policy and advocacy work for foundations across the Commonwealth. So we're really honored to feature the work that's going on here in Alexandria and be a model for what other communities can do as they engage in advocacy work. So, I will now turn it over to Katherine Clardy Key, who's going to talk about economic well-being and what that means for Alexandria's households. Katherine is a performance analyst with the city's Office of Analytics, Innovation, and Data, and she also was part of a team with ACT participating in a nationwide program with other community foundations that were also focused on economic mobility. So Katherine, thank you so much for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brandi. And thank you to ACT for inviting me here today. I'm excited to talk a little bit about economic well-being and some of the indicators that we see in the market kind of going through. So I'll start with Brandi has already talked about the way that ACT or defines economic mobility and the ways, the things that have influenced that. And one that she spoke about was Urban Institute's upward mobility framework, which I just want to give a little bit of a context around. So under this upward mobility framework, it's a three-part definition of what upward mobility would be. It includes dignity and belonging, economic success, and power and autonomy. That probably sounds a little bit familiar, as it definitely informed ACT's economic well-being definition. And one of the things that's really important through this, if we can go to the next slide, is about racial equity. There's an acknowledgement that racial equity is necessary for all people and all members of the communities to prosper, especially those who have been excluded by structural inequalities. So one of the ways that we kind of operationalize that is when we're looking at data and things like that, we really try to look for disaggregated and see data and to see our different parts of our community impacted different ways throughout this. Now, under these three kind of very large parts of the definition, there are 5 pillars under this. So that's everything from rewarding work. So that's looking at things that pay a living wage, provide dignified work conditions, and offer kind of that economic security, to high quality education. We know that from preschool to post-secondary, this really provides a crucial avenue for economic and kind of social mobility throughout it. Then we have opportunity-rich and inclusive neighborhoods. So these really play an integral part in supporting a family's stability and well-being. It gives them access, having rich and inclusive neighborhoods, opportunity-rich. It really increases their access to social and economic opportunities, and especially the children's chances at thriving and succeeding as they continue to grow. On top of that, we also have a healthy environment and access to good health care. So this helps people of all ages to surmount a lot of life's challenges. You need a healthy environment and good access to health care in order to do well at school and at work. And it ensures that with that people can fully participate within their community. And then finally, we have a responsive and just government. So this is a government that would engage residents in decision making. So all residents, not just those that can show up to a public forum, maybe on a Saturday morning. But it serves the needs of all of those community members with both restraint and fairness. So as you can see from this definition, this is a very wide encompassing kind of look at upward mobility, and you can also think of it as economic well-being. There are many pieces to this, and it really takes that ecosystem of coordination and collaboration to make any sort of kind of progress in this area. And I wish I could talk to you about 1 million indicators today under all of these to give you a complete and full picture of what it looks like, but I'm going to restrain myself and just kind of focus on 3 today. So I'm going to talk about these kind of 3 indicators of economic well-being. First is the access to housing. This one is very close to my heart. My background is in urban planning and in housing. And so it's really, housing is one of those things that to meet the housing costs, people sacrifice so many other things. They sacrifice reliable transportation, educational attainment, residents in those high opportunity areas that we talked about. So affordable housing really kind of lifts the burden on families that they feel, and keeps families in good physical, mental, financial health, and really helps do that. So housing is one of the most important ways that we can think about that. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit from both an affordability and a stability aspect. The second is access to childcare. So we know that access to preschool contributes significantly to kindergarten readiness and to the future academic outcomes of students. But also, what we see with childcare and having affordable childcare and preschool, it really helps curb the cost and make it easier for especially mothers to rejoin the workforce and to keep their existing job. So it's a really important aspect to making sure that people can take those opportunities to work, take those opportunities to find economic stability. And then finally, probably the one that people think of first when they're thinking of economic well-being, they think about having employment that is stable and provides kind of that living wage. So finally, I'm going to talk about access to employment opportunities within our community. This is a direct reflection of the economic success there. And so we will get to talking about those three. So we can jump into housing. So affordability in our access to housing. What is the average cost of a market rate rental housing within Alexandria? I'm really focused on the rental part of our population because about 58% of Alexandria households are renter households. And so when we're thinking about, okay, how much does it cost to rent a different size kind of space, and how much income do you need on that? So what we have in here is that we have the 2025 average utility adjusted market rate rent. That means that it's inclusive of utilities. So you can think of this as not just what they signed when they signed their lease, but it's including the water, the power. I believe it also includes Wi-Fi, which we're considering utilities these days. So to get a studio in the city of Alexandria, the average cost is around $1,860. If we look at a 3-bedroom, which is about what you would expect a family of probably 4 or 5 would need at least a 3-bedroom for space-wise, that's about $3,160 per month. And if we look at what income is needed to be able to afford those rents, we have the income that you need for that 3-bedroom is around $126,000 per year. And then at minimum, when you're looking back at the studio, it's just under $75,000 a year. If we go to the next slide, just forward one. Yeah, the Alexandria median household income, as discussed, is reported in our last American Community Survey, was $119,000. So just under $120,000. So a person making the median income, so about half the people within approximately half the people in our city, half of the households are making less of that, would not be able to afford the 2-bedroom kind of within there. So these numbers are actually even higher if we look at just the rental units that have been built since 2020. Makes sense. They're newer places. But definitely what's kind of driving some of even the affordability of what you can find within this space is our older units. And then within that, if you are needing an older unit for a larger family, there can be some housing quality issues that can come into play there. So we're really trying to see that kind of pressure of people who are looking for affordable housing. It still requires a pretty high income in order to be able to afford to live within the city of Alexandria. And even thinking, one thing that's not on here, but another way that we look at this sometimes is housing burden. So that's like the percent, if you're paying over 30% of your income, going straight to housing, that is considered housing burden. And for our low and moderate income households, so people who would be under this kind of median household income, that's about 82% of that entire renter population. So not only are these rents, you just need high, salaries in order to afford them. We're also seeing that it places a pretty high burden within our medium to low income population. All right, next, I want to talk a little about housing stability. So that's from the affordability side. And in housing stability, I want to talk about evictions within the city of Alexandria. So I have 2 things on here that tell an interesting story. The columns that are in the bars that are in the light blue, that is our eviction rate. So an eviction rate is calculated by saying the number of writs of eviction that are issued. So that's when someone gets to the end of the court process. The number of writs of eviction that are issued divided by kind of our renter population within the city, or household number of households. And as you can see, going from 4.1%, 4.4% in 2024 to 3.9% in 2025, we've actually seen a little bit of a decrease in our eviction rate within the past year. And looking at the 2026 numbers, we obviously have a little bit to go, but I think we're going to be at a similar space, if not slightly lower, this upcoming year as well. Now, so while we're having our eviction rate lower a little bit, we are seeing what's happening in the green bars, which is a filing rate. So this is the number of filings. That's the beginning of the court process for an eviction is actually going up. Because again, this is the number of filings divided by the renter population. So as you can see, it went from 10% to 10.1 in 2024 to 10.6 in 2025. So we are seeing our filings go up, but we're seeing our writs of eviction go down. So this story that it's telling here to us is that we are finding that more people are entering the eviction process, entering that court process. But what's generally happening is that they're not making it all the way to the writ of eviction. And that's because their cases are usually getting dismissed or non-suited, which happens when people pay. So between when an unlawful detainer is filed to when you go to court and potentially have that writ of eviction issued is usually about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. And so what we believe is happening is that there are people who are falling behind. Maybe they don't have their full rent, but they have most of it. And then immediately on that 5th day when they've not paid, or the 6th day when they don't pay, their landlords are filing an unlawful detainer, which is the beginning of the eviction process with the court. But then those families are able to catch up within those extra couple of weeks, so that by the time that they eventually need to go to court, the issue has been resolved, and therefore they don't have these writ of evictions that are issued, and therefore they get to stay in their homes. Now, while that's great that we're hopefully seeing some of the ability to either get the resources that they need, or they just need that one additional paycheck. There are still a lot of consequences when you have an unlawful detainer filed against you. It can affect your ability to get future housing. And also, it can affect your credit score and things like that. Now, we do have some laws that have gone into place around expungements for people who have had an unlawful detainer filed, but did not end up having what we call a judgment issued against them. And so while those are tools that can be used in our community to help kind of remove those from people's records, the damage can still be done with just having that unlawful detainer filed. To put a little bit of context, I see in the chat there's a question around the numbers of this. So for this year, as of kind of April 24th, so a couple weeks ago, in the fiscal year of 2026, so July 1, 2025 to about April 24th, there had been 3,666 unlawful detainers filed. That would be the green bar. And there had been about 1,315 writs of eviction issued. And to keep going down that process between a writ of eviction being issued and a family actually being removed from their home, we see that that's about 60% of the writs of eviction that get filed or they get issued. We see about 60% of those families either self-evicting, so they move on their own, or they are there's action by the sheriff in order to do that. So the 4% is pretty consistent with what we saw pre-pandemic, and then we had a significant drop off during COVID when we had access to rental assistance. And so now we've gone back to pre-pandemic levels, but we are seeing a little bit of that decrease within within the writs of eviction being issued within there. All right. So the next one I'll talk about, we talked a little bit about access to childcare. So the cost of childcare as a percentage of median family income, again, that's around $120,000. In Alexandria is among the highest rates in Virginia. Northern Virginia is higher than the rest of the state, which I think we could all probably guess. But actually, within some of these subgroups, Alexandria is the highest within not only Virginia, but the entire kind of DMV area. The one I really want to highlight is that infant-based childcare. The median yearly price of infant-based childcare, and this is also for 2023, so it's probably increased a little bit over that time. This is the last time the study was done. It's about $25,000, or it's a little over $25,000. That's the equivalent of about 17.4% of the median family income in the area for Alexandria, which again is the highest within the kind of between us in the DMV. We see that home-based is slightly lower. It's about $10,000 less. But it still is the equivalent of about 10%, almost 11% of a family's income, or at least of the median family income. Same thing with toddlers. The toddler center-based yearly median price is around $20,000, a significant amount for any family, and that's around 14%. So as you can see, as families need to get access to childcare, especially for younger children before they're eligible to go to school and things like that. It's a significant portion of people's income, family incomes, and is probably would be unaffordable for people who definitely unaffordable for people who are living below the poverty line within the city of Alexandria, but just for a significant portion of our city. Because as we said, 120,000 is the median. That's not necessarily, that means half of the people make less than that within our community. All right, and then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about that access to workforce. So one of the things I really wanted to highlight within that, also looking at what ACT kind of has been focusing on, we have our unemployment kind of broken down by age is really significant. So our unemployment specifically of that group between 20 and 24, and this is for people who are in the workforce, so not necessarily people who are in school and things like that. But as you can see, we are comparing between the gold bars on the left, which is for people between the ages of 20 and 24. So people who are usually looking for their first job, potentially just out of high school, or maybe a little bit of post-secondary, versus the rest of your career. So from 25 to 64. And so if you look all the way to the right, when we look at the overall number between that, the difference between a 2.8% unemployment rate versus a 6.8 unemployment rate, you can see that that's significantly higher between those two age groups. But then if we break it down by gender, which we have women to the left and men in the center, it's really those men between the ages of 20 and 24 that have a significantly high unemployment rate within the city of Alexandria at 8.2. So a lot of that younger unemployment rate is being driven by both, but significantly disproportionately affecting kind of young men within our community. So, and if we put this into context, if you'll go to the next slide really quickly, unemployment is something that we do get numbers for every month. Maybe not these breakdowns every month, but just to put into context, there's a lot that's been happening recently around unemployment as relates to the federal government and shifts within the federal workforce. And so Alexandria's unemployment rate, which has been historically low, as it is with the entire kind of DMV area, because it's we've had a pretty stable employment base because of the federal government. We have seen fluctuations, and our February 2026 unemployment rate was about 3.4, which is about 323 people. And that felt really high to us. But then when we put that into context of young men being significantly higher than that, almost 5 percentage points higher, it's definitely a smaller population, but just really puts into context how this is the issues of unemployment are really concentrated within kind of our youth who are trying to get their first job and things like that. So I'm going to stop there, or else I could talk for hours. And I want to open it up for some questions that people might have about this kind of economic well-being data that we shared.
Great. Thanks so much, Katherine. Let me see here. We have a question in the chat. Since we are looking at impact on well-being, wouldn't it be more insightful to use median of bottom half of household income so that high-end earners don't skew the results, and we can have better understand the impact on the bottom half of Alexandria's community?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. And thank you for when you're trying to develop when we're trying to develop policies and programs, that's definitely something that we would want to do because you want to focus on the population that you're trying to build things for. I think when we're looking at the economic mobility, or excuse me, the economic well-being of our entire community, we have to think about how this all fits into context. I think sometimes what we talk about within the data world is that people can get hidden within the data, that things do look rosier because we have such high earners and things like that. But we do think it's and that's why disaggregating kind of the data, whether it's by age, if we have things like income, that's always great to do. We'll talk about race and ethnicity. I'm sure that's another big one that we always want to look for data within that. But we think for giving the complete kind of understanding of what our city is looking for, we like to use the median as showing like, it's not even just people who are making 60% of the area median income that are struggling. Like there's people who can make the median within that, and it still can be a difficult place to always have that stability and economic kind of success.
Great, thanks, Katherine. And then one other question is, do we know why the unemployment rate for young men is so high? Is it a mismatch of skills, needs, the availability of opportunity, something else? Do you want to go ahead and answer that? I will also say we have a lot of experts in the room on this call, and many of them might be also working in this space. So I also encourage people to share their comments too, as based on some of the work experience that they have done too.
Yeah, Natalie, I'm happy to give some of the information that I understand, but obviously would love if other people have a deep understanding of this. So I think there's two parts that I want to highlight from that. Would you mind going to, I have an appendices within my work that's looking at high school completion rates. Could we go to that slide, Emily or Vanis, by any chance? Can give a little bit of context. Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so this is one thing that I like to talk about when we're this is not necessarily just about men, but I do want to talk about kind of the ways that we're starting to see inequalities that start at the high school level and with diplomas and completion rates. So what I've disaggregated here by race is looking at the percentage for each of these different race and ethnicity groups of advanced diplomas, which is in the bright kind of blue, standard diplomas, which is in the green, and then dropouts, which is in the yellow. And two things I mean, the thing that should stand out to you the most within this is that bright yellow bar that's within the center right there. So of the dropout rate within the Alexandria Public Schools in 2020 2025, there were about 100, just under like 150 people who dropped out that year. What we're seeing is that 75% of the people who dropped out were Hispanic students within that. So I get that that's not necessarily just men, although the rate was higher for men than it was for women within this. But I do think that what we can see is a little bit of there's a start within the school programs that, helps build and continuing that education for students as they're going forward that I think really kind of plays into if you don't have the strong, solid foundation in high school and in that age range between the 16 and 19, that then when you get to the 20 and 24, that's really hard to do within that. The other thing that I'll say is I've been a part of a program to one of the things that I'll say with a program that I'm doing that has been doing research into workforce development opportunities within the city. We interviewed a bunch of students as well as people who work with young men and like looking to for economic opportunities. A couple of things that we heard within that is that there is there are these programs, but they're limited for people helping to get their first kind of job. I mean, I think one of the great ones that we know about is the summer youth employment that's in here that's been a part of this. But we also see things within the trades, whether that's like apprenticeships and things like that are very popular, but there's just like limited numbers. And we're really hoping that that's a place where the city can work as part of the ecosystem that we've talked about to really kind of grow those things as well. So I think that there is a little bit of that of the skills and needs that you talked about, that mismatch of like the available jobs within the area and the young men that we probably need some additional training, even though if it's not formal education.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, for sharing that and for the question. And I think that's what some of the things that we're trying to wrestle with as we do the work in our youth employment and CTE working group. So thank you for the question. And thank you, Catherine, for sharing all of the data that you just did. I feel like sometimes this can feel like a little bit overwhelming, taking in all of the data. And so I guess my question for you is around, as we look at the trends in the data, what ripple effects could these economic pressures have on Alexandria residents and our community over the next several years? How should we be thinking about it? And then maybe I'll also ask a question on the other side is like, what are some of the bright spots for us to be thinking about too, as we think how to prepare?
Yeah, so I think all of this is definitely interconnected. I'll take housing for example, and what I was talking about a little bit of like when you have an unlawful detainer put on your record, when there's a court record version of that, while you potentially can get that expunged, or even if you were able to pay literally the next day, those are things that can have ripple effects within your family. So if then when you're looking for new housing, you have that people can go and look up your name and they see that within that, that potentially could keep you from being able to find future housing and things like that. So a lot of people potentially would have to leave the area. That's something that we hear a lot of as one solution or one solution that families have to take within themselves. And so, I think our area is so interconnected, not only within the city of Alexandria, but just like who we are as a region. So when the rest of the region is maybe hurting a little bit more economically, as we've seen again with kind of federal like unemployment as well, that we really start to see that instability and the pressure continue to be pushed down, and especially on the traditional systems that we've had to help with this. So we saw this also in COVID, that there was a great network of nonprofits that ACT was a part of, and the Eviction Prevention Task Force that was really working of like, okay, we're seeing a significantly higher need. So how can we make sure that that we are getting the resources to the people that need to. So the different churches came together and the nonprofits to work together as a part of that. However, when that funding goes away, that can be really hard to continue to sustain that. And then put on top of that, maybe you have new people who traditionally had that stability, but now if there's higher unemployment, maybe the employment stability that we got from the federal government's no longer isn't there as much, that can continue to put pressure, and it just makes it harder for them to serve the people that they've previously served. However, on the flip side of that bright spot, I think that our coordination and our city's ability to coordinate is something that I continue to hear as just something that's not only a little bit of an anomaly within communities, but something that just really makes us special. I've worked with helping people get eviction data kind of throughout the state of Virginia and across the country. And one of the things that we have access to, a partnership with like the city, working with the sheriff's office, working with these nonprofit communities, and having that like continuous sharing of information so that we can again get those allocations to the people who need it most is a real like value add that we have within it. And I think, when we're seeing the eviction rate go down because of that, I think that has to be part of it. When the state also has passed this like eviction diversion program that's going to be big. That's another thing that Alexandria is so well positioned to implement because we've been coordinating across the courts, across the nonprofit sector, and with the city government before. And so we're really well positioned to take that and really kind of run with it.
Yeah, Catherine, I totally agree with you on that. I think we hear also just the unique relationship that our community has with city government, with nonprofits, the ways that we work with businesses is very unique for our community. And so definitely think that's been a highlight we've seen across the country when we talk about our work, and really appreciate you highlighting the pilot that's going to start this summer around the eviction diversion. Also want to call out that the city is going to have a new Office of Financial Empowerment. And so really look forward to working with them and seeing what resources are available. But I also want to highlight some of the people who are on the ground doing the work, these faith-based emergency financial assistance providers that are really meeting people where they are and trying to be innovative in how they're responding to the needs. And so one example I want to highlight is we know that when you get a car repair, you have a repair for your car, it can be really have a deep impact on your finances, right? Like I think there's a stat that says 1 in 4 Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. And so when your car is needed to get you to and from work or to pick up your kids, or maybe you're a rideshare driver, and so your car is your work. And so anytime that you are not with your car means a loss of income, it means instability. But there's now one provider that's helping to support car repairs. And so this reduces the time away from work. It allows families to use that money for rent or for other basic needs instead of putting them into repairs. And so just want to highlight there are a lot of really wonderful things that are happening in our community. So at the direct provider assistance level, but then also some of the bigger things that we're trying to work towards with systems change and policy changes and getting more funding to support the work that we're doing. So with that, I'm not sure if there are any other questions, but maybe I could if we can maybe launch our next poll question, because after hearing all of these things, we want to engage you all now just to say, okay, you've heard about all the things, how we're talking about economic well-being, what that looks like for Alexandrians at a real level. Like, what could ACT be doing? I mean, we're doing a lot of these things, but what do you feel is the most important thing that we should be focusing on? Is that the advocacy? Is it the capacity building or grant making? Continuing the convening work that we're doing, telling the stories, or maybe there are other things that you feel like would be more impactful. Go ahead and put that in the chat, and I'll give you all a second to fill this out. And looks like we have just about 50% of you who have completed it, so I'll give you another second. And looks like we are mostly capacity building grant making. Oh, advocacy is moving up. I'm going to say let's go ahead and stop the poll and share the results. So here you can see, here's how people are thinking ACT can play a role in advancing this work. So capacity building, grant making, advocacy are the big ones. Thank you all so much for your participation. Katherine, thank you so much for being here, sharing this really important data and helping us to better understand our community. And now I'm going to turn it over to our President and CEO, Heather Peeler, who will close us out.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandi and Katherine. What a informative, insightful conversation. And if all of you who are listening and participating on the chat, if you're like me, I'm sure you were taking a ton of notes throughout the conversation. And this conversation today, this morning, is exactly why ACT hosts these stakeholder briefings. We want to provide deeper insights and understanding about our community so that we all can take steps together to create a just, vibrant, equitable community. I'm sure the information shared today in today's conversation is prompting you to take action. So we want to wrap up our discussion with a few ideas for what you can do. First, as Katherine noted, the data she shared really is the tip of the iceberg. And so if you are motivated to dig deeper, you're curious, you want to understand more, there are a lot of resources out there, but wanted to highlight a few that have really informed us here at ACT. One, it's two books that we would recommend, Evicted and Nickel and Dimed, and we'll put the links in the chat so you can look at them in more detail. But these two books offer narrative nonfiction accounts to provide a deeper understanding of and appreciation for the complexities and real life challenges of people who are living on the financial edge. It takes you a level below the data, so to speak, to really understand what it means in terms of people's day-to-day lives. There are also other data resources that we would encourage you to explore. One is the website Opportunity Insights, which is a phenomenal resource. It looks at economic mobility from a wide variety of vantage points, and it's an excellent source if you're looking for both data and analysis. I also encourage you to visit the website for one of our partners, Voices for Virginia's Children. They've compiled great data about childhood poverty throughout the Commonwealth. You can also take action by using your voice. Brandi spoke about the advocacy efforts that ACT is engaged in, and it looks like many of you are encouraging us to continue that work. But you can join us in that. Contact your elected officials at the city, state, and federal level. Let them know that these are issues you care about and encourage them to take action. We know that advocacy works when elected officials hear from us, and we've already seen it in some of the policy changes that Brandi highlighted at the beginning of today's conversation. Also, we encourage you to connect directly with the direct service nonprofit organizations all across the city that are working with compassion and commitment to support the economic well-being of Alexandrians. You can volunteer or serve on their boards. Your time, expertise, and commitment are a very valuable resource that can make a difference in getting those supports to our neighbors who really need them. And then finally, your philanthropy and generosity is another way you can take action. So I hope you'll consider continuing or expanding your support for ACT. As both Brandi and Katherine mentioned, real change happens at the systemic level in addition to those direct services. It's not the work of any one organization that's going to solve the problems and challenges that our community faces alone. It's really this constellation of organizations working in collaboration and partnership. That's how we're really going to tackle these issues at the root cause in a very sustainable way. That's the work that ACT does, and so I hope you will join us in supporting that work. So I hope you found today's conversation equal parts informative and inspirational. Thank you so much for making the time to learn more about our community and how ACT is playing a role to support economic well-being. Again, I want to thank Katherine for sharing her insights and the data from the City of Alexandria, Brandi for sharing her overview and perspective on ACT's programmatic work. We really appreciate everybody's time today. If you want to continue the conversation or learn more, feel free to reach out to me, Brandi, or Tricia Ritchie, our Chief Development Officer. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this beautiful spring day.